So as you can see, there's a basic jump in Celeste, and you can climb walls. And that's all you can do for now, but that doesn't mean we cannot move quickly already.
Yeah, by hopping quickly, the racers are able to move a bit faster than you normally would. So the technique is called bunny hopping. It's not used much outside of prologue because you can dash later in the game, as we're about to see now.
Yeah, well, it is used a lot to preserve momentum after dashes, so, but of course not as frequently as you see here in prologue.
So now we see with the dash, the runners are able to move a lot faster than you were without it because of a technique called hyperdashing, which is basically where if you duck while you use dash and jump, you're able to jump really low and very fast. And along with hyperdashing, there's also wave dashing, which is kind of taken from the Super Smash Bros. Technique, where it's basically just the same thing as a hyperdash, but you start it in the air.
Yeah, and they are interchangeable speed-wise, so you can see runners using both depending on the situation. Of course, in the first chapter here, Forsaken City, you have these traffic blocks that move when you grab on them or stand on them, and then they just follow the set path. You can use this momentum to reach further areas, but in the speedrun we just use extended hypers instead.
Yeah. An extended hyper is basically you do a hyper dash, but you don't dash and jump at the same time. If you jump a certain amount after the dash, you're able to maintain your dash and dash again after you jump into the air.
And we see Louder here already complete chapter 1, and DukeFireBird's not far behind. Let's see if he goes for the neutral jumps. No, it takes the intended way instead.
And when we get into the hold site, which is the second stage of the game, you'll see these weird starry blocks. Those are called dream blocks, and the way that they work will be revealed shortly as we get into this stage.
Yeah, and now the dream blocks are active, and basically moving through them means that you're dashing until you leave the dream block, and then you actually still have your dash after it. So you can use those dream blocks to move in interesting ways.
You're also able to dash out of the dream blocks, and that gives you a bit of height and maintains a lot of momentum going through it.
Almost forgot the skip cutscene there. So here we have the Badline chase, where there is a sort of evil spirit of you called Badline trying to chase you and kill you. She is around like 3 seconds behind, but
Louder was trying to do a pretty advanced technique there where you dash diagonally between the 2 blocks, and normally you'd have to jump up and dash vertically. And he seemed to have a bit of trouble with it.
Yeah, he was struggling a bit. And here we have some coin blocks and a block switch where you have to grab all coins to move on. But he just makes it look easy. Ooh, actually misses the coin there. You see DukeFireBird also trying to do the same fast dream block, but instead, after a few tries, he just opts for the normal route.
That was a couple of unfortunate deaths by Louder on that long screen right there. And now he's coming onto the longest screen of the thing, which can be really bad if you mess up on it.
Yeah, long rooms are kind of the most unforgiving rooms in the game because you respawn at the entry or in the entrance of the room, so those are the rooms you try to be most safe in usually. You see him now here at the end of the dream sequence where he will realize he was actually sleeping. So we wake up and suddenly all the dream blocks are gone.
And in this awake sequence, you can see loudur moving very quickly between the screens. Not as fast as it has, obviously, but still a lot of skill involved here.
Yeah. There's just a bunch of hyper dashes in actually quite precise positions, so you don't lose momentum moving forward. And he finishes outside with a 234 actually, which is not bad. You see here DukeFireBird struggling a little bit with this long room, as you mentioned, can be very unforgiving, especially if you die. Takes his time, and he's able to move through. And loudur is now in Chapter 3 Resort, where we see this kind of dust creatures. What do they do again?
So the dust creatures move back and forth along a selected route, and that allows for the creation of cycles in Resort. And that's really where you start to see a big difference between experienced runners and non-experienced runners, because the difference between each cycle is so huge when you factor in all the different rooms that it really creates a big difference. Yeah,
you generally want to learn both entry and death cycles, but if you can get it during the entry cycle, that makes everything smoother, of course. You actually see a lot of runners, when they die, they go out of the room to get the entry cycle again, instead of having to deal with the death cycle.
There are a few instances where the death cycle is faster, but not to the point where it's worth waiting for the respawn in order to get it.
loudur trying a little more advanced strat in this room here. Gets it the third try, still pretty decent. And DukeFireBird here gets some solid advice from the postcard. To be proud of your death count, because you're always learning. Which is very good advice for Celeste, since you die a lot. Especially if you're casually playing the game.
You'd prefer not to die in a race, but sometimes it's kind of unavoidable. It's pretty easy to die in this game.
Yep. I see loudur here, meeting Oshiro again. Now entering Huge Mess, which is designed in an interesting way, where there's 3 kinds of objects that we have to get rid of. We have boxes, towels, and books. You can kind of choose which way you want to go, and which path you want to take first, but in the speedrun, we generally follow a set path.
Yeah, and that's because of where it sends you out after you finish the section. You want to be as close to Oshiro as possible, so you don't have to spend much time going through the huge mess room, which is kind of hard to get through.
And coming up is what we call a spike jump. And you see loudur here get it first try. And in fact, the hitbox of spikes is such that there's a little bit of wall sticking under it. And if you move away from spikes, you actually do not die. And thus you can jump off this wall and get some extra height there.
And DukeFireBird isn't too far behind loudur right now.
Yeah, he's doing really well. So the thing that confused most people about spike jumps is that you're actually not jumping off the spike, but the wall behind it. And yeah, that's what I noticed, at least.
Celeste has very weird hitboxes, which is with its spikes.
Yeah, they designed it as such to make it feel more natural, instead of so that every mistake is basically the players instead of the game. So a lot of weird things can be done in speedruns to abuse those lenient hitboxes.
The game was also very designed to be speedrun oriented and speedrun friendly by the designers.
Yeah. See DukeFireBird here in a room where you could use an extended hyper to get across, but sometimes you're not comfortable with it, so he uses the dash crystal instead. Which is totally fine. And as you can see, loudur has now cleared the room of all the stuff, so he can grab the key and move along with his journey.
And here we see a long vertical elevator shaft and
a bunch of long rooms, actually. Elevator shaft is kind of really killing for newer players since there's a bunch of long rooms chained together that you have to beat. Some wall bounces here. Did we mention these yet?
No. You can hit off the corner of a block when you're. Not necessarily the corner of a block, but if you jump when you're against the wall, you can get a bounce off of it to create some more vertical speed.
Yeah, pretty much. And here's also saw that you can actually retry while holding a key, so you keep the key. And that allows loudur here to respawn at the beginning of the room instead of having to go back. Saves a bit of time there. And he will move into the final Oshiro section.
So in this section of the resort, Oshiro kind of maps your vertical spot, and will have a little flash of lightning showing when he's going to go, and then he just goes along that vertical plane. And if he hits you, you have to start the level.
Yeah. And once again, why Resort is usually seen as a kind of a difficulty spike. These rooms are a little bit longer than the previous levels, and there's a lot of stuff going on, a bunch of cycles, a bunch of dust creatures to annoy you. But loudur just, you know, makes quick work of it.
This room, if you do it correctly, you can actually manage to get through it before Oshiro even comes to you, which is what loudur demonstrated right there.
And the so-called infamous final Oshiro room. Infamous for killing runs, actually. So let's hope loudur makes it through in one piece.
And
he does. It's a really good resort time.
Yeah, sub 6 minutes.
It's not bad at all. Firebird, meanwhile, looks to be at the final button, the towels. So he's still moving along quite nicely.
That character that you saw on Firebird's screen right there, that is Theo. He will be serving a much greater role later in this run, much to the dismay of many runners that don't like that section. But yeah, in the casual play, he serves a big role in the storyline, but obviously this is a speed run, so we don't get to see much of the storyline.
We're skipping cutscenes here. I'm actually starting to like that part, but we'll mention it when we get there.
And
loudur now
is getting to the part of the run known as Ridge, and you'll notice that there is wind coming from the left and right side of the screen, and that basically pushes you in the direction that the wind's blowing as things works. And some people hate it, some people don't mind it. Depends on how experienced you are with the game.
Another spike jump there, loudur. Did it first try, nice. And a wall bounce that's quite tight actually. You use the dash from the previous screen, so you have an extra dash to use in that one. Because you get your dash back on screen transitions, and I cannot English, but that's fine. See here, auto-scroller skip. Nice. The extended hyper allows him to skip a bunch of that auto-scroller section with the arrow blocks. Even though the screen itself is not scrolling, it's considered an auto-scroller because you're kind of forced to stand on the block.
And does a nice trick with extended hyper on the cloud.
Of course, these arrow blocks move in the way of the arrow, but sometimes there's a blue part sticking out of it, and then you can control the direction of the arrow block with it. It's, for example, in this auto-scroller room right here.
This one isn't really quite as skippable, unless you're a TAS. But
unless you're a TAS, but we're not a TAS. We're just mere mortals. And here you have a cycle of alternating wind and non-wind, which leads to quite some interesting strats, but loudur here. Got the backup, that's nice. Managed to not die there. That's that would have lost him a bunch of time if he didn't.
And coming up soon on loudur's screen, we're going to see snowballs, which are very similar to Oshiro in the way that they look. So they will come from the right side of the screen and towards the runner. And it bases off of your vertical distance at a certain time. So it can, if you're up somewhere and then you go down, but you have to go back up, it still might hit you because it sends from before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they can be quite annoying, but at least they're cycle based. So you can develop strategies for them, especially if you're not in rooms for that long. Usually when you have to improvise, it's when they are becoming annoying. DukeFire, meanwhile, managed to reach the Oshiro section. It's getting a bit further behind, but still moving along at a nice pace.
And loudur is coming up to the end of the bridge.
What's that, 333? That's pretty good, especially for his PV. And coming up next is the Mirror Temple, which is thematically one of the more important story chapters. And of course it introduces a bunch of new mechanics.
These blocks right here, they activate whenever you dash and go along the pattern route that you can see, and you can use them to create a lot of momentum. That's a very big skip that loudur just did right there. Normally you have to go to the left a couple of screens in order to get a bubble to move to the right, but by doing a wave dash there, you're able to skip it.
Yeah, that was very nice. First try as well. See here, DukeFireBird struggling a little bit with the final Oshiro section. So I hope I just didn't curse him. Otherwise, he'll have to do this again. Ooh, loudur missed the faster strat in the room here, where you skip part of using this dash block.
And Duke gets to resort.
So here we have red bubbles instead of blue. These bubbles will travel infinitely until you either smack your face into a wall or you dash. And there's actually a developer intended shortcut here used to get us another like collectible, but we just use it to not have to grab a key, which says a minute or something like that.
Mirror Temple allows for a lot of skips because it has very big open rooms with a lot of explorable territory which you can use to get through.
Yeah, a bunch of strawberries. So now we somehow move through the mirror, and we're in this kind of weird area where we control the seeker here, and we'll see more of these boys in just a little bit.
That screen kind of serves as a tutorial to show you how they work, because you'll be trying to avoid them later and you want to know their movement so you can not get hit by them.
Yep. And of course, Battleline makes her appearance again to talk, so we just skip her and move on. And here's the first Seeker of Mirror Temple. These boys will home into you and then attack, and you can actually bounce off them. And they also can collect coins for you if you want.
And if you bounce off them, they go into that little phase for a second. And when they pop out of them with there's like
an explosion.
Yeah, and that explosion causes the switches near it to be turned on. So if you're able to direct a stun seeker toward the switch, you can get it so it hits that one and explodes.
Yeah, and they might look at random, but they move entirely dependent on your movement. So you can actually manipulate seekers to break blocks for you, for example. And the explosion also gives you a tiny movement speed boost, which can be used in some rooms later on. So See DukeFireBird not opting for the auto-scroller skip. But, ooh, actually dies in the room. That's unfortunate. And Louder's actually kind of struggling with this room. Seems to have trouble with it.
Similarly to the snowballs, the secrets aren't much of a problem if you play without messing up, but if you start making mistakes, they can be really challenging because you have to improvise.
And coming up is the search checkpoint, which has a big skip called search skip. Would you like to explain that for everyone here?
So basically what you do with search skip is, as you see Louder just did, you reverse dash jump towards the other side, and what that is able to do is you still maintain your dash when so you go towards off the left side of the screen and you do another diagonal dash and you're able to get through it. And that skips a very big section of temple because normally you have to go and get 2 keys on the area below that. But by doing that, you're able to skip like 3 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah, it's the most important, if not the only skip you have to learn if you want to run this game. All the others save like little time compared to this. And hey, look, it's Theo. He is in a crystal now, and we have to kind of carry him around to get to the end.
And the main feature of Theo carrying him in the crystal is that your basic movement speed, just walking, is very slow with him. But when you're speed running, you don't really do a lot of walking. So
yeah, you cannot dash while I hold Theo, but you can throw him, do a dash, jump, or hyper, and then pick him up mid-air. And since that actually preserves your momentum, you can move much faster, especially in this room.
Yeah, as you see, Louder just flies through it.
Because of course, moving blocks, if they have a certain momentum, you will just kind of inherit that momentum, so you can go really fast if you hyper off of these blocks.
And now we're at the second to last room in temple. And
the Theo could have gotten crushed there, and if he dies, you actually die as well, since you need to you need to get him along. Yeah, and that's indeed an unfortunate death.
That's no trouble the second time. And then in this room, there's little waves that push you back as you're trying to get to the end. They can be really annoying if you fall down. There's no holes in them.
And we see DukeFireBird here in the heavy wind section of Golden Ridge, where you basically have to dash if you want to move at all. Otherwise, you're just hold to a standstill. So he's not that far behind. I think he's still doing really well, considering his PB being over an hour.
I think it's an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And here on Louder screen, we see another new mechanic, which are these feathers. And basically, when you get a feather, you control your movement using the analog stick or keys if you're using a keyboard.
Yeah, and it's actually slightly faster. Oh, he's going for lake skip. So I'll come back to feathers in a little bit. Let's first look at lake skip here.
He does it.
And there's actually a 3-pixel window underneath that spike where you can wall bounce off of to basically skip having to go around the lake and get a crush block, or Kevin block as we like to call them. A block you see right here, to just go around and go up. And all in all, it saves around 4 seconds if you do it on the first try. So we pretty much broke even there.
And DukeFireBird coming up along the end of the ridge here.
And you can dash on the sides of the crush blocks at any side, and then they will move in that direction. They are primarily used to break blocks and just to help transport Madeline across screens.
It's a flashy strategy.
Oh, I actually got that. Nice. You see DukeFireBird done with Chapter 4, onto the Mirror Temple.
And with Reflection, which is the chapter that Louder is in right now, there's a lot of different branching routes, but most speedrunners will use the fastest route because that's what we do. We speedrun the game. We try to complete it as fast as we can. So you'll see them choosing specific routes over the other based on how fast they are.
Yeah. And overall, the routes don't vary that much in time, with the exception of a few rooms that are just way too slow. So especially in the final branch, there are actually some runners who take the other route instead of the normal way, which is down. Or instead, up instead, I guess. And actually the task also deviates a little bit, but that room is just much harder to execute, so you see speedrunners go down here, usually.
And you can see DukeFireBird trying to do the first skip in Temple.
Of course, there's also these bumpers you can see on louder screen, and they just bump you, as you might expect, to the opposite side of where you hit it.
If you hold away from them while you're getting hit by them, it also increases your momentum a lot. So you can see them doing that occasionally.
Oh, misses the feather there. It's a kind of a big time loss, because these feather sections can be quite long. Actually, there's a strat here. If you do it right, you can get what I call a continuous feather, which means that you do not have to transform back into Madeline, but that you instead maintain feather form like you see here. And that's actually faster, because transforming takes time.
Nice save there by Loudur, not bad.
Did we mention analog versus directional for feathers?
Oh yes. So with feathers, it's highly regarded that using an analog stick is much faster than using a keyboard, because with a keyboard there's only 8 directions you can move, where you have full 360 control with an analog stick. So, and turning, I think, less than 13 degrees completely saves your momentum, so you don't slow down when you're using an analog stick as much as if you're using a keyboard.
Yeah, 13 is correct. Per frame, of course. And here is the final big crush block before the boss fight. And is he going for the fast boost or just moving along as normal? Looks like still fast, but we enter the Madeline fight. The Madeline fight, actually.
So here we see Madeline is going to shoot a combination of these glowing orbs and lasers at you as you go through the screens. And there's also blocks falling from the ceiling, and you just have to hit Madeline, and she'll move across the screen until you get her enough times.
And there's these energy balls and lasers that she'll fire at you, but as with any room in Celeste, this is completely deterministic, so her pattern is always the same, depending on each room, of course. So for example, in this room, it will be 5 sets of 2 balls and then a bunch of nothing, and then she'll repeat the cycle. DukeFireBird, meanwhile, is in the unraveling section of Mirror Temple. He will be meeting the Seeker soon. So he's keeping, I think that's really good pace for him. Not entirely sure if he's ahead or behind, but it looks good.
Seems pretty good. That could have been bad on Loudur's screen. He got behind that one instead of fighting laser.
Yeah, he's almost done with the first part of the fight. You would think that would be the half of the fight, but it's actually, the first part is longer. Oh, barely gets clipped. Couldn't beat the cycle. Because after you hit battle line, you get pushed back, but you regain your dash quite quickly. And if you time your dash right, you will also use it quite quickly, and then you can beat cycles, such as beating her to the laser.
And now Loudur is entering the second stage of the Madeline fight. It just gets a bit more hectic.
Yeah, block start to move. And it's just a bit more chaos, but it's all quite doable. I always like the quote of Battleline here saying that we're not mountain climbers, which I agree, since we're speedrunners. We do it
Also
even faster.
Become a bit of a meme in the community.
DukeFireBird here in the final Seeker room. As I say it, he gets hit by a Seeker, so I should probably shut up, but let's hope he moves along well.
And louder in the second to last room of the battling fight. And we'll see if DukeFireBird goes for 6 skip up here. Seems like it. He does it first try. So
And you go ahead.
Okay. On ladder screen, you can see that he now Madeline's hair has turned pink, which means that he has 2 dashes because he is teamed up with Madeline for reasons that I won't get into because spoilers. But so, and that means he can dash 2 times in the air, which can be used a lot in the last stage of the game.
Yeah, so the main story conflict is resolved in Chapter 6. And we arrive at Chapter 7, the Summit, which is a final challenge for you and your new powers to climb the mountain after you fell down so far. So all mechanics from previous chapters will return. And right now we're in the reflection part. And after that we will start with Chapter 1 until 5. And then at the end you have the final real summit.
Each different section of summit is named by like a height. So you have 0 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters, etc. Each corresponding with a different part of the game.
You see a louder comfortably clear the first part. The first 0 meters. And DukeFireBird is now at Theo. And what I forgot to mention is that if you notice, Madeline on louder screen has pink hair. And the pink hair means the 2 dashes we mentioned already. And the red hair is just having 1 dash, with finally blue hair being no dashes.
And also on the last screen of each section of Summit, there is a purple battling orb, which you use to launch yourself up into the air. So you have to hit all the different battling orbs before you can finally progress to the next section.
They have effectively teamed up to climb the mountain together. And as you can see, when you have 2 dashers, you do not need a lot of platforms to keep moving. And as such, the game does not provide you with many.
The entirety of Celeste does a really good job of taking mechanics from throughout the game and putting them together seamlessly, even when it doesn't really, even when it's like a different section of the game. Like as you can see, there's green blocks in this section because it's based off of old site. You'll see dust monsters in the next section that's based off of Future and so on.
Yeah. And it's always building on what you've learned, but in a very clever way, in which players barely notice it, but when they eventually get into Summit and see all these old mechanics again, and they blaze through, as you can see here, with these double dashes, it feels really good.
You can really see Ladder using the ability to jump out of the dream blocks here a lot. Pretty much every dream block you're able to jump out and move much faster than
Yeah. Jumping out of dream blocks gives you a tiny speed boost, something which is taught to you in the B-sides. You can also actually hyper dash out of these dream blocks, although I've not seen either player go for it yet. It's a bit more technical to do.
And now you can see Ladder is on the fourth section of Summit.
Yeah, the cycles return. And the dust creatures as well. Oshiro is still in his hotel, so don't worry. But there's some interesting strats you can do, and there's a few long rooms here, and that's why this section is regarded as one of the hardest in the game, or in the run at least.
And Duke is moving on to Reflection.
And if I look at this time, is Louder on PB pace? It does not look like it anymore.
PB is 40 minutes and change.
Yeah, and 3000 is around 3 to 4 minutes, and if you're having a really good summit, you'll leave here around 7, or well, the top runners leave here around 6, but I'm assuming 7, just based off his PB. So you could actually still get it.
Anything's possible. Just believe.
Just believe. See some nice shortcuts here to intended strawberries. So,
which the community has dubbed as swag berries.
Wow, that berry is pretty much guaranteed, so I'm not sure. We have the only snowball room in Summit, but that does not mean it's not brutal. And again, since it's a long room, taking a death is very costly. But he gets a nice extended hyper here to move underneath. And we have another auto-scroller skip.
Nicely done. Still a bit more.
And this wall bounce is actually trickier than it looks, since you're just using a corner. It might look unintuitive, but it works.
Very nice job from them.
Seems to be moving along quite nicely in this section, although there have been some costly deaths. Here you can actually just ignore these arrow blocks and move along quite quickly and do not care about the developer's intent. It's just always just funny to see.
There's not a lot of speed games where you pay much value to the developer's intent.
True. Although a bunch of the speed tech was discovered and intended by the developers, so.
Search skip, the 3-minute skip in Temple, was actually intended by the developers. Well, maybe not intended, but they knew it existed.
Yeah, they found it and they left it in. They actually made it a little bit harder, requiring you to do a reverse dash jump, but they left it in. You see Louder moving on to the 2500 meter section, with, of course, dash blocks returning and all the mechanics you know and love.
Or don't love, depending.
Yeah, depends. Nice save there. And we got a few more spike jumps here with what we call key skip. And this saves you the trouble of having to go down into a maze, find a bubble, and go back up. So instead we just grab the key and move along with our lives, because we got a speedrun to finish.
See Louder using the momentum from the dash blocks again.
And he's definitely on PB pace here. This is really nice. Door skip, skips the door skip. So you have a few pixels here to go between the door and the spikes, and that's called door skip. It saves about 1 second, and it's quite costly if you die, so it's mostly a meme in the community. So his run is now not valid anymore since he didn't use door skip.
He also didn't die in prologues.
So Louder has about 3 minutes and 30 seconds to PB. That's definitely doable.
And in the final section of Summit coming up, we're going to see vertical wind going upwards and downwards, and that works similarly to horizontal wind, except for it moves you up and down rather than left and right.
Yeah. So here we see downward wind, which makes you feel a much heavier, kind of restricts your movement. But if you can get hypers and dashes off, you can ignore the wind mostly and move along. So here DukeFireBird almost at the battle and fight in reflection. Got the developer skips quite nicely there.
And also you can see on ladder screen for the final section of Summit, there are several flags counting down. Each one of those is a checkpoint, so when you die, you respawn from that. Several of them are skipped intentionally by runners. Save time.
Let's see here that Loudur's PB is actually a 39-35, and in that case, this will be very close. As these sections take about 2 minutes, so unless he completely aces it, we will most likely not see PB, but I'm still believing.
As they say, don't stop believing.
Exactly. If you stop belief, then why
feeling.
continue, right? See DukeFireBird entering the fight. He gets the smack battling around a bunch. Oh, did I see a flag 13 def? That's unfortunate. This is one of the most notorious flags in Summit.
Oh, and that's just about the worst place you can die in the entire game.
Yeah. It's long, there's a bunch of coins you have to get for door. You're very floaty because of the upward wind, it just takes a while to complete, so dying is a nuisance. Nice neutral wall jump there from loudur to hop over the spikes. Mainly possible due to the wind.
And the next flag on ladder screen is one that is commonly skipped. And yeah, he does it too.
I actually, when I first played Celeste, I completely missed flag 8 existing, so I thought they miscounted. It feels really natural to skip it.
You have to go really far out of the way in order to get it, so in the next section isn't real risky.
And we're in the final section of Summit. Of course there's checkpoints, but there are no more screen transitions. So loudur is almost there. There is still a sub 40 possible, but it will be very tough actually.
No, I don't think.
No, I'm being unrealistic. But a low 40 is still a really good time. Flag 2 is also very dangerous. And do we see a flag 1 def? Let's hope not.
Flag 1 is fairly simple for the most part, but you can die on it. And he completes it in 40 minutes and 20 seconds.
He blazes it with the 420. They're very good time. Quite close to his PB, and that's the consistency you want in this bracket, in this group phase.
And DukeFireBird nearing the end of the battle and fight.
Nearing the end of the first section, that is.
Oh, yeah.
But
so he could still PB.
yeah, I'm not sure what his average summit time is, but it still looks possible. He has around, what is it, 20 minutes if he finishes this chapter with a reasonable timing. That's definitely doable. Oh, it's so rough death
Couple
though.
of costly deaths.
And it also needs to be said that the players who enter here with low experience or just being new to the run is really amazing to see, since this influx of new players is what we want to, keep this amazing game going. So it's really nice to see new faces.
Yeah. And obviously, in this tournament, some runners will have more experience than others, and that's okay. It's just trying new things, and it's fun.
I actually heard there's a 12-hour challenge coming up, where you challenge people to learn a new speedrun or something similar in 12 hours. And Celeste is perfect for recommending it. Try it out, race your friends, see if you like the game.
It's a game that's very easy to learn and hard to master. There's really only three, well, not counting the left, right, up, and down, but there's pretty much just 3 buttons that you use in the entire game. Jump, you climb, and you dash. But
yeah,
all of those can be used in so many different ways that it's perfect for a speed game. And DukeFireBird is now in the second section.
Ooh. And of course we have more feathers here. And a bunch of falling. You can actually hold down while you're falling. And after a few frames it will increase your fall speed. And Madeline will kind of squish her body together to streamline herself down better.
Known as fast falling.
Yeah, basically fast falling. And it might not save a lot of time on one screen, but overall it will add up.
In such a fast-paced speedrun, all the little things really matter a lot, even if they don't look like it. Like when you're watching it in real time.
Yeah. And overall it's deaths in the end. The fewer times you die, the faster your time will be. And that's of course true to a certain extent. After a while you're forced to learn faster strats, but deaths will always be the main thing you can base your times on.
It's also very different to other speed games in the way that even top runners will die multiple times in a run unintentionally, because it's just that high intensity of a game. But the death respawn only takes like 1.5 seconds, I think. So
yeah, you can even short it if you press jump. Well, no, you need to press the talk button or something like that. Let's see here DukeFireBird finishing up the fight. Getting his second dash, leveling up. And another thing to note is that even though Summit is level 7, is actually about a third of the run in length. So you might think you're almost done, but Summit is there to hold you down.
there's also much more of the game that isn't shown in the speedrun, because it's an any percent speedrun, so you complete the least amount of the game as you possibly can. There's an entire 8th chapter known as Core, and there's B and C sides for each of the chapters that are just harder versions of the A sides.
Yeah, so there's plenty of challenge available, and there's of course categories that run through these levels, such as All Hearts or 100%. So on to Summit, the final chapter of this speedrun.
So Duke needs under 21 minutes in Summit in order to PPA.
Yeah, and judging from his reflection time, I think that's very doable. It's always interesting to see how less experienced runners tackle these rooms, as you're not always seeing the strats, the top runners use, because those strats are kind of difficult. But it does not mean that their alternatives are slow.
So far in the tournament, there's been a lot of very interesting strats done by runners that aren't quite as fast as the optimal strats, but are still like very intelligent things that they can do in order to still be faster than what they would have to do without any advanced strategies.
Yeah, exactly. Going for the wall bounce. I was almost going to say it was for the wall bounce, but no. Funny thing is, if you're not that proficient at wall bounces, that intended way is not even that slow. It's like only a second or something. It's not that much.
Like we said earlier, most of the tricks and strategies in this game don't even save more than a couple seconds at most. But it's just there's different strategies for almost every screen, and there's so many screens in the game where over time it really builds up.
Yeah, 1 second over 200 screens is suddenly 3 minutes and a bit. Oh, almost got crushed there.
Nice recovery.
One of the things that Celeste also does well is rewarding the player for going fast. There's no such thing as obstacles that prevent you from using the speedrun tech to break levels. They just let you do whatever, and I'll embrace it.
It's a very speedrun friendly. And Duke coming into the final room of the 500 section.
And so far, space is looking good for PB. Like these two sections together cost about as much time as like 2500 alone. So if we just add all these up, we should get around 18 minutes, which is enough for PB.
And obviously, different runners are going to have different areas where they're good and bad. But some people may have maybe really good at reflection, but can't do a good mirror temple. And it's the same way with different sections of Summit.
Yeah, my resort is comically bad, so I always lose time at the beginning and then somehow get it back in other levels. It's actually a nice strat to just stand on top there to get your dash back. Something I've actually forgotten to do a bunch.
There's a couple of rooms by the DukeFireBird. He seems to be doing a good job of staying calm and not dying in scenarios where he messes up.
Yeah, and that's really important, especially in Summit. Of course, it's the final chapter, but still quite long, so you're prone to making mistakes because of nerfs, especially if you're on a good pace. So it's good to see him be a little bit safer in favor of not dying. Coming up to one of the worst rooms in the run.
This room changes so much if you watch like a top speedrunner doing it. They can just run through it so fast that it's just pretty impressive how good they go through it.
Yeah, there's a lot of cycle breaks you can do, but they all require precision and fast movement. Because otherwise you might just get hit like that. So I've also seen runners just wait a bit to be as safe as they can. And there we go.
Another thing that can be very tough in speedruns, in this section in particular, is a lot of the dust monsters, they change how fast they're going from screen to screen. And I know personally I've gotten really messed up on cycles because I'm used to it moving a certain speed on previous and die on accident.
Yeah, that can be rough. And a bunch of these rooms are also dependent on your momentum coming through the room transition. So if you're not really comfortable with the layout of the level, it can be hard to get the strats right. And die. Gets hit by the final dust creature there. That must feel bad, and then it's up to him to maintain composure. And it's funny to see as he does not take the shortcut with the strawberry there. As if you're not proficient at extended hypers, that is actually a slower way to go.
Yeah.
But of course, when you can do extended hypers, it's faster.
Just missed the orb there. Fortunate.
Yeah, and I think this final room is also quite annoying to deal with because these dust creatures can sometimes be completely out of sync, or they can fall along with you to block your path.
Almost retries instead of skipping the cutscene there. Bad.
Coming up on 2000. Uses the dash regain from the room transition here to do the skip. And grabs a berry as a prize.
I just noticed Duke has 4 strawberries. Not sure where he got the other ones. But
What did he get?
4 strawberries. Don't you generally just have 2 at this point?
Alright. He did mention grabbing swag berries, I think. Still. And do you think he's gonna do auto-scroller skip?
Seems just to be going for it normally.
Yeah, I've not seen that many hypers or a bunch of the faster tech, but that does not mean you can get a that your time has to be bad. You can get a sub hour without it if you die less. So the game always rewards you for doing better, whether or not it's faster strats or just fewer deaths. Coming up to one of the more fun rooms in Summit. Just moving along with the wind always feels really nice.
That's a nice job when you do that.
Oh, that was a hyper actually. And of course, one thing we have not mentioned yet in this run were ultra dashes, because I did not see the runners go for them. But just in case if you're wondering, an ultra is when you cancel a hyper into another hyper. So you have to do an extended hyper and then immediately hyper again. If you time it right, you get even more momentum, because your max speed is uncapped when hypering, and that's called an ultra dash. And especially the top runners use it a lot, and the TAS of course use it all the time, because it's the fastest way of moving.
It can be very impressive if you see it. Just how fast you move.
Yeah. And for example, a screen you saw in 1500 meters can be done with a bunch of ultra dashes, and then the room suddenly disappears in a few seconds. When in these runs, you can see they are taking more time to complete it. Coming up on the key, we can actually get to see the maze that you have to take for the bubble.
You can go on the left side to get a strawberry first. You're going for strawberry switch.
Swag berry.
Because it's a speed run. But
I gotta go swag. I mean, if he goes for door skip, he wins the race, right?
yeah. Maybe not on paper, but in our hearts.
Exactly. And he has around 10 minutes left to PB. And he's getting close to the final part, so I'm still believing. I think he's got it, at least with this pace.
And he's
Actually going for door skip.
And he does
got it.
Nice job by Duke to get that.
Validated. Oh, he actually used the dash there. Now he has to kill himself. Also gotta pay attention to when you use your dash, because these rooms force you to use it in a different time. So you cannot waste them.
Sometimes it's hard to not just instinctively use your dash when you get to a part where you can move faster. But you have to wait until the moments when you need to use it. And Duke is, I think, pretty far ahead of his PB going into the final section.
Yeah. A good 8 minutes to complete 3000. As reference, I think world record does it in under 3 minutes. So that should in theory mean it's possible, right?
Yeah.
In theory.
The task does it in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so that
Yeah, but
it's possible.
in theory, yeah, exactly. So the downward wind section again can be really annoying, especially if you're not that comfortable with the dash mechanics yet, because you need the wave dashes and the wall bounces to keep moving.
Of course, every part of Celeste is doable without the advanced techniques, because the game is designed to be beaten by casual players as well. So
yeah, they do teach you a bunch of the tech in the BNC sites, but yeah, they're not like expecting you to be able to do them here. Although I do find that most summoned sections, especially the later flags, they are the most similar when done casually or done by speedrun. Of course, in the speedrun you die less doing them, but in the end the strats that are used are very similar because there's no other option.
especially in the upward boom section.
Yeah.
Not
There's a
lot.
few pixel or pixel perfect tricks you can do, which are, or a few tight tricks in general, but mostly it's the same.
Kind of brought about by the lack of platforms.
So now in the upward wind, and we're almost there. We passed the 1 hour mark, but that does not matter. PB is still in sight.
Seems to be having a pretty good 3000 so far. I don't want to curse anything, but
Like for example here, if you want to get through without wall jumping, I think you have 1 pixel to do that, but you don't even see the top runners attempting it since it's so costly to die.
there's a lot of, even though this game has been speedrun very competitively for a long time, there's still a lot of room for improvement even in the top runs.
Yeah, definitely.
How precise the entire game is.
Especially with corner boosts being relatively new as speed tech, which we did not mention yet. Which, if you dash or move to a corner of a wall, you can actually climb, jump over it, and maintain your momentum. And if you dash, that means you can actually go quite fast and skip a bunch of stuff by hopping over corners.
I think it's 3 pixels that you have to do things, but it works more effectively if you do.
Yeah, you can do them without dashing, but then you hardly notice the difference, of course.
Duke tried to neutral jump over that spike on the wall, but opted to go for the regular strat the second time.
Nine. We're almost there. Actually gets flag A for safety. I respect it.
Yeah, it's a good thing he did. Nice save there.
Oh, still ends up dying though.
Yeah.
He's cutting it close, but I think he's making it. Moving on to 4, cursed it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Another good save there.
Yeah, a clutch saves here in the stretch. As we enter flag 5, the end is in sight. And this is then where the nerfs can be especially annoying, since you know you're this close.
The last few flags are also fairly long compared to the rest of the flags. So.
Yeah. The final barrier. Well, except for flag 1. That's just more of a cooldown flag.
Ran out of stamina right there. Somehow managed to grab the other side of the wall there. I don't know how.
That was unfortunate. Makes it this time. And coming to the final hurdle, flag 2. Well, the final rough hurdle, so to speak. And nails it. And I always find funny how you can see flag 1, they're also always so eager to get to the end because you know it's so close and within reach.
He does it in under 105. It's a very big PB.
Yeah. Was the 2-minute improvement? That's really nice. And good job again to loudur14 for winning the race. DukeFireBird PBing in the end, getting a small consolation prize.
Very nice.
Could maybe get one of them in to talk to them a little bit, to see their thoughts on the run.
Yeah, either one of you can join.
And we should have DukeFireBird in here.
Hello.
So, how did the run go for you, like feeling wise?
Well, it's a PB, so it went very good in my eyes. Had a bad reflection, but other than that, I've golded almost every other split, which is good.
That's really nice to hear. So, you could see a bunch of clutch saves, especially in Summit. How did it feel like managing to not die and move on?
Pretty unique. Yeah, I'm still learning a lot of the tech for the game, but it's very fun.
That's very nice to hear, at least. And, I'm sure there will be more PBs in store for you.
Oh, definitely. I think my goal for the tournament is to try to eventually get down to a sub 50 if I can. So,
Ambitious.
It's a good goal to aim for. And I think we also have Louder in here. So, Louder,
GG, Louder.
congrats on your victory. With the barely missing the sub 40, but still solid time overall. What were your thoughts about this race?
I had my mic off. Well, it was a good race. Just before the race, I had a sub 40 run, so I expected me to do another one, but well, still a good race.
Yeah, both of you had really good runs.
And what chapters were you struggling the most on, or doing the best on in this run in particular? Just from your perspective,
I think
of course.
every chapter were okay, not really the best I could do. But,
Oh, that's fine as well. So yeah, congrats on finishing the race and for winning on Louder, and of course DukeFireBird, congrats on your PB. And I think that will do it for this race, and we'll see you soon. I think on Speed Gaming 3 there's a race going on right now.
Yep.
And in around half an hour there will be another race on this channel, so there's plenty of Celeste for today and the coming weeks, because this tournament is only in the very beginning. So be prepared for more Celeste in your future.
Thank you guys for commentating.
And all right, do you guys want to, give any shout-outs? Of course, follow these guys on their Twitch channels if they want to do more runs. But anything else you want to say before we sign out?
GG's and good luck for the rest of the tournament, man.
you too.
Good luck to you both.
All right, and with that, thank you again for watching here, and be sure to check out the other Celeste races in this awesome tournament.
Yep. Again, there's a run going on right now on Speed Gaming 3, so you can check that out.